All right, the first one I'm going to introduce is Rohan. I want to tell you a little bit about it. I'm going to put this into context. Many of you, I've gotten to know a lot of you, are the first from your families to get a college degree, to go to school here, right? We live in the most dynamic economy in the world, and that's why your family, whoever brought you here, you know, they left everything behind. They left families and friends behind. And they didn't come here. If you ask a lot of people outside of someone who studied culture or what have you, a lot of people think people that have immigrated here recently or in the last 100 years, that they came here because of freedom. And of course, we enjoy a lot of freedom here in the United States, and we take it for granted. But immigrants have come here to work, to compete, to provide for their families. And I wanted to at least give a little context for Rohan, all right? I met Rohan when my company was just fledgling. We had probably the worst website known to man. It was right when the internet was getting popular. So we needed to interview somebody to design us a website. And was it Flash? Is that what you, Flash, yeah. Flash is when things on the website started moving a little bit. If you could move something on the website, you were technologically advanced, and your company was looked at as a pioneer. We interviewed a lot of people. Rohan was the tip of the spear when it came to technology on Flash. We also hired him to do all of our computers, to network our computers, and ultimately, he maintained our website, kept all of our computers and a firewall protected. Since then, he's started, opened, and sold several different technology companies. Highly intelligent, been through a lot of challenges, and I want to introduce you to him now. His name's Rohan Williams.
How are you guys? Take a good look at me. I am not a public speaker like Walt said, but the one thing I've learned in life is to show up. I'm 42 years old, came to this country in 1988. My mom came to this country to start a better life for our family. Went to Broward College, Central Campus at the time. I was 16 years old. Started working my first job. I earned $3.60 an hour, pushing shopping carts at Albertsons. About a year later, I got promoted to cashier, woohoo, right? After that, I upgraded. I went to lick stamps at another job, which was kind of next door to Albertsons. I got paid $4.25. Worked a lot of odd jobs between 1988 and about 1992, between working at the mall. I even sold perfume door to door. I remember one time going into a bar with a little bag of perfume. I was a supervisor. You know, one of the jobs in the newspaper, you know, everybody come be a supervisor, you know, we train you, that kind of a thing. I was in this bar and this lady chased me out with a machete, I remember. But that's how I pretty much started. I was hustling. I was just trying to get a job. I didn't have a car. I had to walk to work. I took the bus to school. It took me an hour every day to get to BCC, which was BCC at the time, Broward Community College. But I took the bus to school. It took me an hour to get to school and an hour to get back, and I would walk to work 20 minutes every single day. But my big break came when one day I did not have a job. I got a temporary job pulling cable, like pulling cable through the ceilings of this company. And something dawned upon me at the time, and I said to myself, these guys do not have a computer person. They're pulling cable for one reason, to put in computers. So I said, you know, how about I go talk to the big boss and ask him for a job? And I did. That was the first time in my life I actually took the initiative to go after something. And I remember distinctly the day because the big boss was this surly-looking fella that just never smiled. And I had a supervisor who was kind of in charge of me when I was pulling cables, but the big boss, he always looked down. He had shag carpet in his office. He always, walked without shoes, and he had this huge white dog. So he was this rich, big guy. And I was terrified of him. But I actually got the guts to go into his office very politely and ask to talk to him and ask him for this job. That was the best decision I'd ever made. And I think back to it now at this point in my life because I remember throughout life, you're going to be faced with a lot of decisions to make. You're going to be up against, do I continue to go to school? Do I stay in this job? Do I take the leap of faith and start a business? And that's never going to end. You're going to continually face these types of gut-wrenching decisions. The first point I want to bring up to you is the earlier you can start creating the habit of facing those choices and making those decisions, the better off you're going to be. Because I faced that for the first time in my life. I didn't realize it then, but that's what it was to me. It was taking a leap of faith, going beyond my own comfort zone and asking him for the job. So I was so happy to get the job. I hustled. All I did was study hard. I mean, they didn't have computers at the time, so I pulled computer books off the shelf. I asked him, hey, can you buy me this computer software? I want to learn it. I started working for $6.50 an hour at that job, and within 2 years, I was making $18 an hour. I finally ended up quitting the company because the guy that I used to work for, he started his own company, and he asked me to come work for him for $25 an hour. The second thing that happened to me was I would watch this guy. He was kind of a short, heavyset guy, and I realized that he was making millions of dollars every single month running this company. And I was the one keeping his computers running. And I thought to myself, why is he making so much money, but I'm the one that's kind of doing a lot of the grunt work for him? And it dawned upon me that maybe somewhere in the middle of all of that, I could do something as well. So over a period of about 6 months or so, I would watch the man. I would kind of lean over his shoulder and kind of see what he was doing. And he ended up showing me so much of what is possible for me just from the fact that he was a regular-looking guy creating extraordinary revenue for himself on the internet. I ended up quitting that job, and he was extremely mad. But what had happened to me was I actually developed the thought process in me throughout that time frame that possibly I could start my own little thing on the side. Because that's what he did. He actually started this little business while he was working for the other company I worked for. So I started creating a website, building up, a database of people using the website. And then one day I said, suppose somebody would pay me to use this website. Suppose. So I created a form, and I started collecting credit cards. I remember when I first got my first credit card, somebody put in a credit card to access this website. I was so happy. And then all of a sudden, I saw money in my future, right? So I started collecting these credit cards, did not have a business, did not have an understanding of business, none of that. But I knew at some point that if I collected enough credit cards, maybe I could, process them somehow magically and get enough money to start a business. So I asked the guy, I said, I think I had about $10,000 or so worth of credit card to process at the time. And I said, if you process the credit cards for me, I'll give you half of the money. And he did. So I had about $5,000 in my account, and I was extremely happy. Fast forward a couple of months, I ended up quitting the company because I thought to myself, I need to start doing this as a business. And that was in 1995. I have not worked a day job since. I have been dirt poor with no money in my bank account, having to pawn a fishing rod, I remember, to get $8 for gas. But I also remember back in 2000, walking down the streets of Washington with $500,000 in my hand, walking down to the helipad and renting a helicopter and flying around Washington, looking down at the deer as they walked across the ice, some of the coolest experiences. I've also filed personal bankruptcy. I've also gone through some of the hardest personal problems in my life. And throughout all of it, I've been self-employed, haven't had a day job. It's one of the hardest things to own your own business. And as Walt rightly said, you know, we respect one another in business because we realize exactly how hard it is to really pull yourself up and face complete and utter disaster and failure. It builds you as a person. It builds you as a strong individual when you can go through some of those experiences in your life. And so we have a tremendous respect for one another. Now, I told you initially to take a good look at me because obviously, like you're seeing, I'm not a public speaker per se, but I've done a lot of very incredible things for myself at 42 years old. So I want to leave you with 5 specific things that I've learned throughout my entire journey. If you have a pen, I would suggest you write it down, because these are the things that if I could look back 20 years into the past and tell myself these things, I probably would have been a little further along than I am right now. The first thing is dig yourself out of any potential self-doubt that you might have. I thought coming here to this country as an immigrant that success belonged to a gray-haired white man that had a lot of education. It sounds really dumb to say that at this day and age, but that's what I thought. And because of it, I never actually pursued anything. I thought I had to go to school, get good grades, graduate, get a business card, get a briefcase, work for somebody for 20 years, and maybe work myself up into the world. That was my model of the world. But the self-doubt kind of went out the window for me when I actually talked to that first boss of mine, the guy that gave me the opportunity because I simply asked. The self-doubt came out of my head when I was able to give my mom a $20,000 check from my own hard work at 25 years old. I'm 25 years old, and I'm giving my mother a $20,000 check when I came here with no money. So at 25 years old, do you think that I could believe in my soul that I could do many bigger and better things in life? Absolutely. So I would highly suggest for you to examine whatever false beliefs that you have. A good friend of mine, Tony Robbins, I go to a lot of his conferences, and he has this saying called the monkey mind. You come up to speak on stage, and there's a voice in your head saying, what are you doing speaking on stage? Who are you? You know, that's the monkey mind, the guy that comes by, the woman that comes by and tells you all these things that you have no idea where it's coming from. You know, your brain's telling you one thing, and then your monkey mind's telling you another thing, telling you, no, you can't, why should you even try, etc. This is how you were raised, this is where you come from, all that self-doubt. Make it your lifelong goal to examine your false beliefs about anything and everything in life and hit those head on. That's number one. Number two, always introduce fresh voices in your world. I highly commend you guys for showing up today because you're putting yourself in a position to thrive and succeed just by spending your time and listening to the likes of me and these other speakers here on stage. When you put yourself in a position to thrive and succeed by allowing fresh voices into your world, you're basically opening up the world to yourself. You're telling yourself basically that I don't know everything there is to know, so please, you're a smarter man than me, come into my world. Right now I started 2 Facebook groups. I started a fitness group and I started a mastermind group. I did this 2 years ago because I knew that there was a lot more for me to learn in life. So I wanted to bring all those people to me by introducing fresh voices into my world, okay? And so far, I've had probably $100,000 worth of business just from those fresh voices alone. Not because I asked them for work, but because they were business people that I wanted to learn from And because they were able to speak into my life and learn about what I do, then they were willing to do business with me at the same time. So number 3, get in the habit of asking better questions. You might ask yourself, why can't I do this? How come I always screw up? How come this person's richer than me? How come this person got better grades than me? Ask yourself a better question. Instead of saying, why can I or why didn't I? Ask yourself, how can I? How will I? State everything into the positive. I don't ask myself, how can I get up on stage and speak in front of all these people? I don't ask that question all the time of myself. But I did ask myself that question this week because I knew my outcome. My outcome was to impart some information to you and to show you who I am. And if there's one person here that can learn something from my life, a regular Joe, then mission accomplished, right? So that's kind of where I came from with that. Never ask to have more, ask to be more. When you look out at life, a lot of you going into the workplace might think you want a good job to get a nice car. You want the white picket fence and the big house. There's a lot of things I want, but the only way I'm going to get it is by being more of who I need to be to get that. So that's my primary question right now in life is ask how to be more. Rohan, how can you be more in every single situation? Now, with all those points, those are the things that I would say if I were to go back 20 years, 10 years, tell myself, my past Rohan, think about these things because in the future, that's exactly what you're going to thrive on for the rest of your life. And all those things, even if I, 20 years down the road, were to think of all those points that I just mentioned to you, those are the things that are going to help me master success in the future. So I want to leave you with one quote from Theodore Roosevelt that, every time I read this, I get completely juiced and pumped up. It's not the critic who counts. It's not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust, sweat, and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again. Because there is no effort without error and shortcoming. The credit belongs to the one who actually strives to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best, in the end, knows the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Man, I'm fired up.